Good afternoon, fellow patriots. This is Matt Shea, and welcome to Patriot Radio, broadcasting live from deep inside the heart of the future Liberty State. Sponsored once again by On Fire Ministries in the legacy of Dr. Stan Monteith, bringing you the story behind the story and the news behind the news, where it's not about right or left, it's about right and wrong. It's about our hope not being in man, but in Jesus Christ. About not ending in prayer, but moving to action. Your kingdom come, your will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Father, deliver us from the evil one.
Welcome to Patriot Radio.
Good afternoon, fellow patriots, and today on Patriot Radio, sabotage in Poland. Was it Russia? And was it against a NATO ally? We're going to examine that. Also, China continues on the road to war, and it looks like they might be welching on the deal that they just made. Back here at home, several raids busting human and child trafficking. That's good news. And it does look like we are preparing for imminent war with Venezuela. Also, our guest today is Matt Geiger from VERITY Metals, talking about the economy. What is it going to look like here in the next 90 days and going into the new year, and what pain can the average American expect? Here at Patriot Radio, we want you to have all the information before everyone else so that you and your family can be prepared for the times that are ahead and the times that are already upon us. But no fear, we were made for this. So follow us on Telegram at patriotradio.us/Telegram for real-time intelligence analysis and breaking news. Again, we've been so far ahead, being a forerunner on a lot of this stuff. Sometimes people can be lost. But it's important to remember that during this time, what grounds us is prayer. And go back and watch a few episodes of Patriot Radio on some of the things that we have talked about ahead of time. Know what's going to happen months ahead of time. That's the purpose behind what we're doing. And if it does unsettle you, make sure that you pray with us. patriotradio.us/prayer. We'd love to walk with you in that. And also remember that our nation and each one of us has a destiny. Job chapter 23, verse 14, for he carries out what is destined for me, for you. And many such destinies are with him. Presupposes a couple things. First, that we're believers. Second, we actually take a step in our destiny. But the safest place any of us can be is right in the center of God's will. And that brings us now to your daily intelligence briefing. Coming to us from the globalist front.
The future is built by us. We have the means to make progress on the global agenda.
So what is it about these flock cameras tracking your license plates everywhere you drive? Some say it's for safety, some say it's for marketing. Probably is for both. Technocracy News, once again, out front on this. It has been discovered that flock cameras are actually full of security holes and use outdated, unsupported technology. Well, I think this at least deserves an investigation, this allegation. And also, what are our local governments actually doing to vet these technologies? Something you can ask your local county commissioners and your local city councils. And I think it is a question that they should be able to answer. Also, Americans are beginning to revolt against AI data centers over rising energy costs. Meta, Facebook's campus, covers 396 acres southeast in Mesa, Arizona, with 5 buildings totaling more than 2.5 million square feet of data center and support space. Nova's $3 billion campus spans about 159 to 160 acres, includes 5 data halls, and provides up to 1.3 million square feet of data with a planned total power capacity of 300 megawatts. EdgeCore, 450 megawatts. Apple, well, just the tip of the iceberg is a $1.3 million or 1.3 million square foot data center. And then lastly, Edged Energy is building a 12-acre data center, once again near the Phoenix Mesa Gateway Airport. People are wondering why their energy costs are going up, and now they are beginning to push back. And especially that the green energy, the wind energy and the solar energy that was supposed to provide all this power, but as we, or many of us anyway, warned about years ago, is going to bring us to grid instability. And what has to happen now is all of that has to be scrapped, and they're going back to nuclear, which is where we should have been actually all along. Many people don't know that 3 Mile Island actually, its containment system worked. But nuclear energy was demonized, and the reason was they were setting up this control mechanism through green energy. Who really owns America? The banks, the billionaires, and the deep state, according to Pat Wood. The concept of ownership is being redefined as renting for life. By 2030, you will own nothing. We've heard that before, but what exactly will you have? Well, many people have missed the debate going on here in Washington state, actually, over the last 20 years. The idea that everybody should live in an apartment about 300 square feet, enough room for your kitchen and your video game setup in your bed. All on universal basic income, all tracked based on compliance, but really modern day slavery. That brings us to the China front. Now, interesting on the China front is the Chinese influence in places like Nigeria. We haven't talked about how the Chinese have made massive investments in Africa, as well as the Russians, but how a lot of what they are doing is to foment the jihadi onslaught of Christians in those areas. A Nigerian pastor's life in grave danger after exposing the Muslim genocide. And while those are very disturbing pictures, the world needs to know. Because the leader of Nigeria claims there's no genocide, as do some other African leaders, but the genocide is clearly documented, and it is genocide, real genocide, against Christians. Also, Nigerians Christians are begging Trump for more help. This slow-motion genocide could wipe them off the map by 2075. Over 150,000 Christians have been butchered in the last 16 years, and 20,000 churches destroyed. Vast regions cleansed of believers, all because of Islam. But the bigger issue is, again, China. How is China investing in these countries that is emboldening this? Furthermore, China's fomenting of unrest is not limited to places like Nigeria, but also places like Ethiopia, where it is playing both sides of the coin, and Tigray forces led Ethiopia to conduct its first drone strike since the end of the Tigray War, which may restart a conflict that will bring in Eritrea. Again, all of this instability in the Horn of Africa benefits China. And that's why the Trump administration's negotiations and hard approach to China is forcing China to make some decisions, but it's also resulting in China fomenting unrest and instability. There is a strategy that could help the United States uncouple from China's rare earths and provide some freedom. The interesting part about this is that mines need to actually be restarted again, because getting a new mine up and running can take 15 years. So mothballed mines could provide the timely stopgap. And those mothball mines are all over the place, including right here in the United States of America. See, the thing about rare earth minerals is they actually aren't that rare. The issue isn't just the mining, it's actually the refining. And starting smelters in the United States is really what needs to be next on the table to help us be independent from any Chinese influence. The U.S. is aiming for Thanksgiving as a deadline for a China rare earth deal. According to Scott Bezent today, that's what they're going to shoot for, and it looks like they may make it. However, many are raising, like Gordon Chang, the issue of whether China can be trusted. And in fact, has China already began to breach the October 30th trade deal with President Trump? And it does look like they are, or at least are intending to in the near term. China also has been attacking and trying to destroy companies, like companies that refuse Chinese money. Declan Gainley's company, Rivada Networks, is developing a technology that may revolutionize global connectivity and security, and it appears that the Chinese Communist regime is desperately trying to get control of it, because as much as 99% of global internet traffic relies on a series of subsea fiber optic cables around the world and is vulnerable to natural disasters and, as we have seen, sabotage and attacks. Gainley is working on something called the Outer Net, a constellation of 600 low Earth orbit satellites that would make up the world's first self-contained communication network. China's also continuing its spying and stealing in America. Chinese American was sentenced for stealing U.S. missile detection tech for China. Prosecutors argued that the individual intentionally stole U.S. tech secrets, citing his long history of stealing trade secrets to support the Chinese military. What's interesting about these cases is the last case where a researcher was caught smuggling a bioweapon potentially that would have harmed U.S. agriculture into the United States only got, wait for it, 5 months as a sentence. Something has to be done here for the United States to remain whole. Also, tensions escalate on the North Korean border as the South fires warning shots after repeated crossings of the demilitarized zone by North Korean troops. Seoul has also proposed military talks with Pyongyang to ease tensions. Somehow, I don't think this is about talking. Taiwan said Monday that China had severely impacted regional peace in its row with Japan, which was sparked over Japanese Prime Minister remarking that an invasion of Taiwan would be essentially an existential threat to Japan. Over 650,000 people protested in the Philippine capital of Manila against government corruption, which again looks like a Chinese-led protest to sow disruption and discord in that country. An internal audit revealed that 545 billion pesos spent on flood control since 2022. Thousands of projects were substandard, poorly documented, or never completed. So while, yes, there may be some legitimate gripes, we have to be careful that other nation states are pursuing these to create wedges and discord prior to an invasion of Taiwan. The U.S. has approved a $330 million sale of aircraft parts to Taiwan, the first arms-related transaction under President Trump. The sale is meant to keep Taiwan's F-16 fleet operational and a growing check against Chinese military pressure. Taiwan also doing something the United States should. We should return to civil defense, decentralized with National Guard armories in virtually every major city. Taiwan is sending a civil defense handbook to all 10 million households, preparing citizens for emergencies, including a Chinese attack. It explains how to respond to enemy troops, as well as offering instructions on shelter and sabotage. This is interesting. It follows on something in the modern times that the Swiss did in preparation for potential Russian invasion. And the United States should revisit this. People like Kyle Scheidler with the Center for Security Policy have been talking about this for a very long time. And this is something that President Kennedy actually brought up. And it was one of the greatest deterrences to Russian aggression during the Cold War. Japan says it scrambled an aircraft after a suspected Chinese drone was sighted near Taiwan. And I suspect that these types of things will continue and, in fact, increase in the very near future. And that brings us to the Middle East front. Iran has funneled roughly $1 billion to Hezbollah, the U.S. Treasury says, largely through money exchange agencies and cash-based businesses using legitimate financial mechanisms to disguise origin and destination. Iraq confirmed final election results showing that Prime Minister Mohammed Shia al-Sudani's list came first with 46 seats in the 329-member parliament, which means there will be months of wrangling over creating a majority. In addition to a deal regarding the sale of F-35s and a security agreement with commitments similar to NATO's Article 5, one of the agreements that will reportedly be signed during tomorrow's meeting at the White House between Donald Trump and Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman is an agreement regarding cooperation in the field of civil nuclear development between the U.S. and Saudi Arabia. Perhaps we should watch closely who our allies are and could they potentially use that against us in the future. President Trump congratulated the passage of the UN Security Council's Board of Peace, which will be chaired by President Trump and include the most powerful and respected leaders throughout the world. We will see how this will be implemented because Hamas rejected it and claimed it ignores Palestinian political and humanitarian demands and places Gaza under unwanted international control. It looks like Hamas is about to be run over. Defense Minister Israel Katz declared his full backing for IDF Central Command after the latest violence by a group of Israeli extremists in Judea and Samaria who will not tolerate attempts by small violent criminal groups of anarchist lawbreakers to take the law into their own hands and tarnish the public. So now we're starting to see some of the Israeli elements striking out. You know, there arguably is in Scripture a clear indication there will be some kind of enclave of Palestinians in that area. Not saying I support it. I'm just saying it's interesting that it seems like Judea, Samaria, there can really not be any annexing or any movement there. It's as if it's divinely ordained. Anyway, Somaliland, a beacon of stability in the Horn of Africa, is continuing its push to be recognized as a state and also to receive U.S. investment. When we come back from the break, Russian sabotage in Poland, it looks like it, and some raids breaking up child and human trafficking here in the United States, a big win for President Trump and local law enforcement in Texas.
What if I told you you could convert your 401k or your IRA into gold? While your retirement is being beat up by a volatile stock market and inflation, it could instead be resting safely in physical gold at a place of your own choosing, including your own business. Look, gold has increased 50% in just the last year. Stock market, it's been nothing but a roller coaster. So protect your retirement from market chaos by calling Verity Metals today.
And we're back with the Russia front. Footage published by the Ukrainian Air Force shows killing by aircraft of cruise missiles. And so what we're seeing now is a huge shift in tactics where Gatling guns are being used to shoot down drones because bullets are cheaper than missiles. But aircraft are using missiles to shoot down cruise missiles, which would be, at least logistically anyway, the smart way to go. And of course, logistics wins wars. Also, the U.S. Senate has moved forward with legislation that would impose secondary sanctions on Russia's trading partners, including nations like India and China, which purchase Russian oil and gas. Russia's, well, he's really the barking dog out of the Kremlin right now. Dmitry Medvedev says the war will continue until Russia's federation achieves its objectives. So it doesn't look like there will be peace negotiations anytime soon. Meanwhile, Russia's Ural crude has plummeted to $36 a barrel, the lowest level in more than 2 years, just days before sweeping new U.S. sanctions targeting Russia's largest oil companies come into force. Meanwhile, again, tactics changing on the front line, and I don't want you to laugh at this, but the Russians are using donkeys to ferry 120 millimeter mortar shells to front lines because it's cheaper to replace a donkey if it's attacked by a drone than it is men and machines. we're probably going to see a lot more of this. Now, it's interesting that horseback maneuvers actually came into modern warfare in Afghanistan. And I expect there might be more of this in the future as people are looking for ways to mitigate massive losses due to drones. Ukraine is set to receive 8 upgraded SAMP/T air defense systems, each equipped with 6 launchers and armed with the advanced Aster 30 Block 1NT missile, which offers significantly improved anti-ballistic missile performances. Now, also, French President Emmanuel Macron and Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky signed a letter of intent this morning in a ceremony near Paris, paving the way for Ukraine to purchase up to 100 Dassault Rafale multi-role fighter jets by 2035. So, again, logistics wins wars, and it looks like the logistics is going to continue to roll out and keep that war going. In Denmark, an airport was shut down after unknown drones appeared in its airspace. Again, during the holiday season, we have talked about this, that the Russians are very likely to launch drones into the airspace and disrupt travel in Europe. And this looks like it is continuing to ramp up. Meanwhile, a rail line bringing passenger trains into Warsaw from southeastern Poland on Sunday was damaged by an explosion that authorities determined was an act of sabotage. Interesting that a picture of what they used to sabotage was published online by open source intelligence. And a suspected explosion yesterday on the Warsaw-Lublin route near the village of Mika was in a critical length of rail utilized by Poland and NATO to deliver aid to Ukraine. Without saying it, they're clearly fingering the Russians. Romania has ordered residents to evacuate from the village of Baru near the Danube River on the border with Ukraine as a fire burns aboard a Turkish flag liquid natural gas tanker following a Russian drone strike. Again, all of these border things happening right now, people don't realize this can trigger Article 5 with NATO. Zelensky also signed an agreement to open a new energy corridor with Greece, buying U.S. gas through LNG terminals in Greece. And it will be sent to Odessa through the Trans-Balkan gas pipeline, which, again, with these attacks on shipping there, even though close to Romania, this is a way to bypass that and maintain Ukrainian energy coming in. That brings us to the South America front. Continued indicators that the United States will strike Venezuela. A U.S. Air Force KC-135R Stratotanker aerial refueling plane from MacDill Air Force Base in Florida is currently orbiting over the southern Caribbean, roughly 50 miles off the coast of Venezuela. It is unknown whether there are any fighters or bombers in the air, but regardless, this continues the exercises in that area. At any time, it could result in strikes on Venezuela. Meanwhile, satellite imagery taken earlier in the week shows the USS Gerald R. Ford and several other naval vessels, most likely part of the carrier strike group, positioned south of Puerto Rico near Venezuela. Venezuela, meanwhile, claims it has mobilized 200,000 troops in response to the arrival of a U.S. carrier strike group in the Caribbean. From a force generation standpoint, this figure is extremely unlikely to translate into real operational capability. So they're just throwing this number out, likely for the optics. Now, this is on the South America front, but an attorney dropped a bombshell allegation that Dominion voting machines examined by experts in Michigan found phone chips mounted on their motherboards. Well, that's interesting. I wonder if something else was being hidden in machines in Georgia. Either way, an investigation obviously needs to happen here. We're going to be talking about this issue with our guest today, Matt Geiger. Mexico anti-narco protests that tore down the wall near Claudia Sheinbaum's palace. She is now blaming the right and continues to refuse to tackle cartels, and people have had enough. Could this be fomented by the United States to destabilize the current regime down there, because they are, in fact, emboldening the cartels? In a great result for the right-wing candidate Jose Antonio Cast. This is fascinating. Chile is swinging hard right. Now, if you combine the two right-wing candidates actually endorsed him immediately following the election, he will easily have enough results to win in a landslide here coming up in December. So again, following in the footsteps of El Salvador, Paraguay, Argentina, Ecuador, now it looks like Chile is also swinging to the right. That brings us now to the national front. Acting FEMA Director David Richardson has resigned and a replacement has been named, but more shakeups going on there after, well, some huge questions raised in FEMA responses and their treatment of Trump supporters. But more importantly, do we really need FEMA in its current form? And shouldn't emergency preparedness be at the state and local level? And do states tell local counties that they would be relying on them for disaster preparedness and response? What I found out in the legislature was the answer to that question is no. Most counties have no clue that the states are actually relying on them. But shouldn't that be decentralized? I think the answer to that, though, is actually yes. There are some things that would need to be centralized, but that would reduce dramatically the footprint of FEMA. 120 children were rescued, according to FBI Director Kash Patel. Florida authorities rescued these children in a historic operation. Many were exploited and abused, according to officials. The 2-week Operation Home for the Holidays located children as young as 2 across multiple states and even beyond U.S. borders. I think we can all applaud the FBI for that one. An illegal sex trafficking hub in San Antonio, Texas, was also raided, yielding the arrest of 20 illegal alien criminals. Wonder if illegal immigration and human trafficking is related. Of course it is. It's great to see the locals getting in on this, as local law enforcement is going to be needed more and more across the United States to crack down on this horrendous industry. John Guandolo calling out the number of mosques in Texas, the total 312 as of November 14th. 48 have come into being in the last 18 months. Interesting. 22 in Plano, 27 in Tarrant County, 48 in Dallas County, 84 in Harris County, which is Houston. And it appears that Texans are waking up to this and the fact that there are operational Sharia courts in Texas, according to many eyewitness reports. Now, how do you know that? Well, that'll be the subject of a different episode. In North Carolina, it's also interesting that $50,000 to support illegal immigration, legal representation from North Carolina residents, and also interesting that some Chicago, Illinois activist groups have been training in North Carolina to resist ICE enforcement operations. So Charlotte is the latest city to have a federal surge. Be interesting to see if some of these training grounds and training organizations will be exposed. Also, Benny Johnson coming out today saying that it has now been confirmed that attempted Trump assassin Thomas Crooks used they-them pronouns, had a deep interest in furries, and was exploring gender identity, raising the question about trans violence and the epidemic across the country. And not to be outdone, the National Security Agency, apparently, according to many that have testified, but specifically an NSA whistleblower, saying that there's a trans cult inside the NSA that was pushing radical leftism, anti-capitalism, and anti-Christian messages, and the trans cult is radicalizing Americans within the government and radicalizing political assassins on the internet. Must be stopped. Be interesting to see what Trump does in the next few days about that, now that it has come to light. Trump's economy is surging, and there are many indicators to that. However, one is not, and that is employment. Now, anytime that you raise tariffs, the idea is you have to lower taxes on people because of the disparate amount in expenses that happens. In other words, expenses will rise somewhat when tariffs are increased. So I would expect over the next 3 months, we're going to see a push to really tackle the income tax and allow people to keep more of their hard-earned money and hopefully eliminate the income tax completely. Can you imagine that? Everybody earning under $150,000 not having to pay income tax. Trump reveals he's in talks with Democrats to totally gut Obamacare, ending the gravy train for big insurance. More importantly, restoring true freedom, because one of the socialists' goals was to take over a huge portion of the economy through healthcare. What would this look like? How about health savings accounts? How about being able to spend your own money tax-free on your health care wherever you wanted to do that with high deductible insurance carriers and policy? Paying cash at the hospital, having the hospital lay out the cost of something before you go in for it, as one hospital in Oklahoma has been doing for years, and it's proven to be effective. And by the way, it cuts down on reinfection rates, etc., when you have more transparency in the system. And it makes for efficiency because there can't be wasted money. And it's about time we do something like this. Could you imagine going in and knowing what you would afford or pay for it, what tests you could have, and not be limited by whether some adjuster somewhere says it's okay or not? That would be true freedom, and it would massively affect the economy in a positive way. In an interesting clarification, some are calling a reversal, President Trump said that, quote, House Republicans should vote to release the Epstein files because we have nothing to hide, end quote. A lot of people don't know what to do with that, but for many of us that have been watching this, it's very clear that they're trying to project onto Trump, which is what the Marxists do, what many of their own leaders and supporters have been doing for a very long time. What happens after that? Nobody knows, but I'm not expecting a whole ton. And lastly, public schools slap a does not endorse sticker on the U.S. Constitution and the Declaration of Independence. The Anchorage School District does not endorse these materials or the viewpoint expressed in them. You have to, if you're an American. You have to endorse the viewpoints of the Constitution and Declaration of Independence. In fact, when people are naturalized, they have to actually raise their right hand and swear that they endorse those viewpoints. And this is the kind of nonsense that we've let go on for far too long, and I think we're all fed up with it. It's time to hold people accountable at the local level, and I'm glad that there were some folks that got this some national attention. The Marxist attempt to destroy this country is over. It's going to take all of us to stand up. When we come back from the break, our guest, Matt Geiger.
What if I told you you could convert your 401k or your IRA into gold? While your retirement is being beat up by a volatile stock market and inflation, it could instead be resting safely in physical gold at a place of your own choosing, including your own business. Look, gold has increased 50% in just the last year. Stock market, it's been nothing but a roller coaster. So protect your retirement from market chaos by calling VERITY Metals today.
And we're back with our guest today, Matt Geiger. He is the founder of VERITY Metals. And thanks again, converttogold.com, for everything you do, Matt, and blessings as we come into Thanksgiving here very soon. So there's so much to talk about in the news today, but how are you doing first?
Doing great, man. Thanks for having me, of course. And, it's great seeing you guys over the weekend, and you have a amazing team. So I want to thank them as well.
Absolutely. We're very blessed. So
We are.
Trump is doing a lot of moves this week, it looks like, but a couple of things that caught my attention was he He wants to gut Obamacare, and he's in talks with Democrats to totally gut it. Return the system back to a direct, or more direct anyway, cash payment type system, I think is what I'm getting out of this, and get away from all the regulations and everything, which has really created an insurance gravy train over the last few years. How are you analyzing that, number one? And secondly, what does that actually mean for our economy going forward?
I think it's great for the economy. The idea of Obamacare was to group in, the older, sicker people in with obviously the healthier groups. Really, what they should have done when they created healthcare was try to deal with those older, less healthy people individually, right? And keep, try to work out a better solution there. But don't forget about Obamacare. When it was passed, Jonathan Gruber, the MIT professor, he said that you would have to be stupid. He's depending upon the stupidity of the voters in order to pass that bill. So let that be a reminder to people that Obamacare was really just a way to rein. It was just their first steps toward a communist society.
Really, by taking over one of the largest sectors of our economy. I mean, if you think about the administrative cost of taking money from a person, running it through a bureaucracy, running it through another bureaucracy, and then saying it's going to pay for healthcare, there's an administrative cost there that I don't hear a lot of people talk about, can be anywhere from 10 to 30% in regards to health insurance. So, I mean, just getting rid of that and having a health savings account, for example, where you're paying directly cash should vastly improve the system, but also keep more money in our pockets as a taxpayer.
Well, if you remember, Trump was talking about when he campaigned in 2015 and 2016, he said that, hospitals should have the price, almost like when you walk into a restaurant, they got the prices up on the ceiling above you. Hospitals should do that as well. And this gets into the insurance companies.
Yeah.
Obamacare has been phenomenal for the insurance companies. I mean, it's they just monopolize healthcare. They can charge whatever they want. The bill's going to get paid no matter what. There's no competition. It's a free for all.
Getting into the kind of conspiracy side of this, why Obamacare? Why do you think they actually did this? You mentioned communism, that this was kind of the first step toward that. It seems a little bit more even insidious than just that.
Well, yeah, if the idea is, as historically, they want to control the monetary system. They want to control the healthcare system. If they can control the healthcare system, they can do whatever they want. I mean, take COVID, for example. Look what they did during COVID. If you don't get this experimental injection, you can't work here, right? You're gone. So now they have the complete monopoly of just total power and control, that if it's something you disagree with, they'll turn off your healthcare. I mean, I remember, I think it was Stephen Colbert or Jimmy Kimmel. He said, hey, if you show up to a hospital and you're not vaccinated, sorry, we're going to refuse you service. I mean, it is, you can see where this was headed, and it's sick.
It's interesting when I study the Internet of Things and the whole idea of connecting everything together, giving everything essentially a digital ID tag, every single thing you can possibly think of. One of the interesting parts of testimony that we heard, now this is 10 years ago, was that they wanted to connect your healthcare records to this Internet of Things as well. So here's how it would play out. Your smart refrigerator has inside of it your ice cream, which has the little tag on it, and it's reading constantly, so it knows how much ice cream you just ate. That gets transmitted through the system to your healthcare records, and the next time you're a doctor, they're like, hey, Matt, do you think maybe you could cut down on the rocky road?
Maybe for some people that wouldn't be a bad thing, but I don't think you should have the full weight and force of the government to enforce it, right? I think obviously free choice is a play here, but that might be a good diet strategy for some people, without the enforcement arm of it.
Right? Or on top of that, right, they would say, well, maybe you're depressed and that's why you're eating so much comfort food, right? Here, take these SSRIs, right? It's crazy.
Hell on earth.
Yeah, well, and I think most people miss that this is really the part of what you were just talking about, the digital control state that they want to set up.
Well, yeah, this is what they want to do with the monetary system, right? Trump did a executive order as soon as he came to office earlier this year, where he banned the central bank digital currency. Now, I think if Congress passes it, that probably supersedes any authority of an executive order. Am I right?
It is, yeah.
So I think we still might see Congress as a last-ditch effort try to take us into some type of CBDC. central bank digital currency. I don't think it would last very long. I think people would, it's not going to work, but I think they might try.
Well, the technocrats that are out there right now are really pushing for a digital ID. I mean, they even had Apple roll it out here a week ago, where you can put your passport into their system and it becomes a digital ID. In the technocrats I'm talking about have largely surrounded Trump and JD Vance, which is concerning a lot of people. What do you think about that?
Well, it's scary. I mean, what's the company starts with a P?
Palantir.
Palantir. Yeah.
Yep.
It's very scary that Trump was cozying up with Palantir, but I also know Trump insofar as that he brings his enemies in. Like I have a lot of questions even about JD Vance and his work with Peter Thiel and Ambrosia, right? We discussed a little bit about that. I have my questions about everybody. I mean, realistically, the only guy that I trust, two people I trust are Donald Trump and Dan Scavino. Those are really the only two people that I trust. Everybody else is just, I think they have some skeletons in their closet.
So if they roll out the digital ID and they roll out the CBDC, do you think that's going to be part of what Trump is trying to do regarding the transition of the economy? Or do you think that this is just trying to distract him or disrupt him from the transition of the economy back to what it really should be?
It could be a distraction. I think it's a distraction. I think we're not moving to a new system. I think what we're doing is we're moving to an old system. Certain states, Florida, Texas, they're leading the way in terms of gold and silver are now used as money out there. Now, there's a lot that still needs to be done in order to go back to a true gold standard, right? You have to have redemption capabilities. You have to be able to go to your local bank and be able to put your, $50 gold piece on the table and say, hey, I want whatever the price of gold, $4,200, whatever it is right now. I want $4,200 put in my bank account, right? I think you can modernize the old system. And I do believe we're going to be going back to a gold standard, but not before we get a scare event with something like a CBDC.
Yeah, and so, this, gets back to the Federal Reserve and the shift away from the Federal Reserve system.
Right.
It seems like this might be the last gasp of the globalists, the old globalists. They're not the tech globalists, but the old globalists trying to hold on to some semblance of power.
Oh, no doubt about it. And I think, I would be looking at these cases, Trump's bringing in these people on mortgage fraud, the lady from the Federal Reserve, Eric Swalwell, Adam Schiff, Letitia James. These are just the low-level crimes that he's starting with. I think that the stuff that, if you look into Adam Schiff and what happened at the Standard Hotel, allegedly, if you look into some of these crimes that these people are really involved in, it's going to go much deeper. I mean, they just found Stacey Abrams out of Georgia. They just found her with a $2 billion, she's sitting on a fund of $2 billion. $2 billion. Where is this money coming from? Right. Not to mention the 14, I think it was 13 or 14 money printing machines in Congress that they could just get funding for whatever they wanted. The amount of fraud and corruption, treason, really. I call it not waste, fraud, and abuse. I call it treason, fraud, and abuse. The amount of treason, fraud, and abuse that's going to come out. I mean, you heard Elon. Look at what Elon said earlier this year when he was doing Doge. I mean, he blatantly said he's laughing about it. He's like, yeah, you're not going to salvage this government. This doesn't work.
Yeah, and I think that is where a lot of people are saying, okay, great, we understand that. What comes next? Like, what is going to replace all of that? And I think Elon is saying AI will replace some of it. Robotics is going to replace some of it. And, as I was looking at Trump's performance on the economy, the Dow is up 10.5%. The GDP growth is an estimated 3.8%, which is huge increase just in 1 year. U.S. Treasury bond sales are up. Foreign investors came back strong in May 2025 with $318.5 billion in purchases, the highest monthly total ever recorded. You have foreign direct investment also soaring. You've got U.S. exports both at nominal and inflation adjusted terms are up. You have gas down. But the one area, and this gets back to what we were just talking about, is jobs. Unemployment is actually not improving. And, most people are going to say, hey, I get this, but it looks like we're all being replaced and set up for a universal basic income, and that the sovereign wealth fund from the rare earth minerals, et cetera, oil drilling, is going to help fund that universal basic income. How are you seeing this?
Oh, I totally agree. I would be watching that sovereign wealth fund with everything you got. I do think that we're going to probably be getting dividend checks. I think a lot of this, because you got to remember, all these government statistics, they're phony anyway. I mean, we already know under Biden, the job numbers were completely whitewashed. They're completely phony. We know that the crime statistics completely phony. We know that the unemployment statistic, the inflation statistic, it's all nonsense. I think what Trump's doing is he's insulating himself using these numbers, making everything look good. So of course they can't criticize him. Why? Because it's their statistics. They'd have to call out their own nonsensical system in order to call out Trump. So they're never going to do that. So Trump insulates himself behind these nonsense statistics. But I think really we're headed toward a crash. I would not keep your money in a place like the stock market. I wouldn't be buying U.S. Treasury bonds. I would steer clear of this stuff. This is a time where you want to, as a friend of mine told me, when the country's working properly, sure, you want to be in the market. You want to be getting a piece of the action, right? A rate of return. You want to put your money to work. But when the country's not working properly, which is right now, and certainly the world, you want to store the value of your money. You want to take protection. You want to see how this thing plays out, because it's not going to just happen overnight. We're probably going to go through some pain here, probably early next year. And I would, as much as the market looks good and people want to hang out there, let me tell you something, we're in for a major, major correction.
When we come back from the break, more with Matt Geiger, Verity Metals, converttogold.com, talking about the economy, the crash coming, and some interesting finds with Dominion voting systems and the connection to Venezuela.
What if I told you could convert your 401k or your IRA into gold? While your retirement is being beat up by a volatile stock market and inflation, it could instead be resting safely in physical gold at a place of your own choosing, including your own business. Look, gold has increased 50% in just the last year. Stock market, it's been nothing but a roller coaster. So protect your retirement from market chaos by calling Verity Metals today.
And we're back with Matt Geiger. He is the founder of Verity Metals, converttogold.com. Now, you mentioned before the break that we're coming toward a crash, some pain early next year. What does that actually look like? I mean, is this a stock market crash? Is it an everything crash? Is it the bubble of tech finally bursting? What do you think this is going to look like?
Well, the stock market, it gets confidence from the debt market, right? Bonds. So I think you're going to start seeing problems. You already are seeing problems in the bond market. China has a lot of leverage over the United States, holding a lot of U.S. Treasury bonds. That would cause massive instability because, of course, why? The big banks hold a lot of Treasury bonds. That's how they manage to stay stable. And if we're transitioning, as we've talked a lot about on your show, transitioning from the Federal Reserve System back to the Treasury system, there's going to be a lot of bumps in the road. I mean, from what I hear, and what do I know? Trump is going to be walking this country, the corporation, through bankruptcy. That's probably going to take quite a bit of time. So if you have your money exposed in some of these big financial institutions, I would get it into something physical like gold, silver, get it out of these banks, get it in your own possession. And as you know, Pastor Matt, that's something that I do, which is unique to Verity Metals, which is we'll do IRAs where you can store it yourself. If you want to hold on to it yourself, right? We'll ship it to you. So this is really what people need to do. They need to get their money out of these failing banks, understand there's going to be a major change in the banking system, and wait to see what happens. But at least you know you're safe. At least you're not exposed to the different risk factors.
Yeah, what is money, right? It's something tangible. And I was explaining this to some folks 2 days ago, actually yesterday, regarding the idea behind a Federal Reserve note being based on the full faith and credit of the United States of America. And it used to be a bearer note that said redeemable in gold, in silver.
Exactly right. That's what Kennedy was trying to do. We're coming up on his anniversary of his passing. That's what Kennedy was trying to do. Is he was trying to back, starting off with smaller denomination notes. He was trying to bring back silver as the key is redeemable. The idea is that you want to be able to go into a bank and be able to redeem that dollar for silver, right? Or vice versa, that silver for $1. A more modernized look at that would just be, loading up your bank account with money. But banks don't sit on real assets anymore. They're just sitting on derivatives. They're sitting on worthless nonsense, and that's got to change. So I think I'm confident that Trump has a plan in place for that. But getting there is going to be tough. There's going to be a lot of changes, probably a lot of loss in places like markets, staying in the Federal Reserve System. I would just get out, even if probably for a temporary period of time. Look at gold and silver; it's just more of a bridge to get you out of this failing Federal Reserve System and into something stable while these changes take place.
Yeah. And it looks like there is a lot on the plate that may happen before the end of the year, very likely will happen before the end of the year. Trump saying that he's made a decision on Venezuela back in 2020. And we actually talked about this on Patriot Radio 6 months before the election. And we talked about it 3 months before the election, what the headlines were going to be following the election. And that this election in 2020 was really an attack by China on the American election system. Now we've got evidence coming out, FBI director talking about some of this. We see also that an attorney dropped kind of a bombshell over the last 3 days where Dominion voting machines examined by experts in Michigan found phone chips mounted to the motherboards. In other words, a backdoor access into the motherboards. Back in 2020 and 2021, we were talking about this on the show that, at least according to a report that I saw that has not been made public yet, that China was using proxies through Venezuela, and that there were many people arguing we needed to get access to voting machines in places like Georgia to see if anything internally had been modified. Now it's coming out in Michigan. They have found a modification internally that would obviously go against election laws and just common sense. You think Trump's actually going to do this in Venezuela? And then the follow-on question to that is, what is that going to do to the American economy?
I mean, it's massive. I think sorting through this will absolutely improve the American economy, because if you have real elections, right, that's, from what I understand, Trump is going to really deliver two major things to the country and to the world for that matter, is free and fair elections, real elections with paper ballots, right, as well as real money, real sound money. I mean, look at the Tina Peters case. I don't know, Pastor Matt, if you're familiar with the Tina Peters case out in Mesa County in Colorado. I've met Tina. I've spoken to Tina. And, she was just doing her job. And what she found out about those machines that they were using has them dead to rights. That's why she's sitting in a prison cell. They just want to shut her up. But hopefully, it looks like today Gateway Pundit was reporting Jack Smith might have messed up, and there might be some grounds that could get Tina out of prison. And she's cancer. She's got lung cancer.
Yeah.
So she's eating, sugary, bread and whatnot in prison. If she stays there any longer, she's gonna die. But I would look into her case. Mark Cook. I don't know if you know who Mark Cook is. Mark Cook's done fabulous work. He's a one of the programmer types, hacker types. And he'll sit down, watch his presentation, and you can just YouTube him or something, rumble him. But Mark Cook, I mean, he'll show you dead to rights evidence that these machines are completely illegitimate. And for these people to say that there's legitimacy to these machines, they're just trying to cover up what we all know to be true.
In the legislature, I was actually going after audits of the internals of these machines. And it was always the red line. They would never allow audits of the internal coding, the internal workings of the computer chips. They would never allow that. And I always found that very weird. Why would there be one area that you would never allow anybody to really check to ensure the integrity of the machines? And they were constantly fighting that, the Democrats were. And others too, by the way, which is also an interesting topic for maybe a different day. But my point here is, with Tina Peters, she should be out of jail. And just as a comparison, you have a Chinese researcher who is smuggling a bioweapon, arguably, into the United States to destroy American agriculture, or at least attempt to. 5 months. That was the sentence. 5 months. And Tina Peters is sitting in a cell right now for doing the right thing. And they're trying to insulate her from any influence from the Trump administration to get her out of jail. It's crazy.
She's a Gold Star mom. Her son was a breacher in the military.
Yeah.
He was the guy kicking in the door, the first one in. They called him the breacher. And he passed away in a very shady parachute accident where his backup chute didn't open. So there's a lot of questions to be asked there. And then what she told me was that her husband, who had dementia, who was in a nursing home, I guess some deep state actors came there, visited him in the nursing home, and because he was obviously not right in his mind, had him sign over the deed of their house to somebody else. This is what they've been doing to Tina Peters. It is, people don't know the whole story. When the feds came in there and raided her house, she had a locker, at the end of her bed that she never opened of all her son's gear. and the federal agents who went in there, she had never opened it, never once, and they went in there and took everything and just threw it all over the place, just as a slap in the face of the woman. So I want to see justice for Tina.
I do too. I think it needs to happen. And, for everybody else, out there that doesn't know about the Tina Peters story, Gateway Pundit has put up a lot of great things about that. And I think this is going to happen hopefully before the end of the year. At least the stuff I'm hearing, it will. So
Trump's
Matt,
got to get on it. Trump's got to get on it right now.
He does. Well, Pam Bondi needs to get on it. And it seems like there is a bottleneck there. And I don't understand this. Why have there not been any arrests? Why have some of these innocent people that have been pardoned had to go through hell to try to get out of prison? I mean, there's a lot of stuff there that I think a lot of people are beginning to question, myself included. And coming into 2026, Matt, as we end this segment, what do you think people can do right now to prepare themselves? You talked about gold and silver, but I think a lot of people miss the IRA portion of that. They can actually secure their retirement as well.
Correct. Yeah. You can move your IRA tax-free, penalty-free. It's completely no cost to do it. You're just basically opening up a self-directed IRA. You're changing your investment strategy from stocks, bonds, mutual funds, which you'll get back into. You'll be back in that stuff once we rethink how the economy should work. But until then, we don't know what's going to happen. I don't have a crystal ball, but something big's got to give. Something has to happen. So you're moving those funds to physical gold and silver. We can store it at a depository for you. You feel like you don't want to keep, gold and silver in your house. Totally understand. We'll find a secure facility, get the gold and silver insured. But get out of these banks. Get out of the fiat dollar. Get out of the markets. We're about to see some fireworks. And this is just about wealth. It's making money by not losing it. Nothing fancy about it.
No, nothing fancy, but there is wisdom. Matt Geiger, thanks for joining me on Patriot Radio. Once again, always a great conversation. Blessings to you and keep up the fight.
Thank you.
So you heard what you can do. Check out converttogold.com. This is Matt Shea. Thank you for joining me on Patriot Radio today. May God bless all of you. He is making this generation the greatest one. The awakening is here, so keep up the fight.